You sold me. Amara Laughlin's voice cracked as she stared at her father across the mahogany desk that once represented everything stable in her life. Orion Laughlin loosened his tie, refusing to meet her eyes. It's a temporary arrangement. 6 months, maybe less. A temporary arrangement? She slammed her palms on the desk. The framed artwork, her artwork, rattled on the wall. I'm not a beach house you can rent out. The Everhart Group owns everything now, Amara. The gallery, the house, even the clothes on your back. His fingers trembled as he poured himself a third whiskey. I had no choice. Amara backed away, her artist's eyes cataloging details she'd never noticed before. The designer watch too new for a man claiming bankruptcy. The gleam in her father's eyes that wasn't entirely desperation. What exactly does Callum Everhart expect from me? The words tasted like ash. Nothing indecent. Orion swallowed hard. He was clear about that. You'll be a live-in companion. That's all. A sharp knock interrupted them. The Everhart mansion's driver stood in the doorway, expressionless in his black suit. Miss Laughlin, Mr. Everhart expects your arrival before nightfall. Her father wouldn't look at her. It's $80 million, Amara. I'd go myself if you wanted me. The car that whisked her away from Boston was sleek and silent. Amara pressed her forehead against the window, watching the city fade into the green Vermont mountains. Her phone had been confiscated at the door. No calls, no texts, no evidence. 5 hours later, the gates of the Everhart estate loomed before her. Gothic ironwork against the darkening sky, cameras tracking her every movement. The mansion sprawled across the cliffside like a modern fortress, all glass and steel and sharp angles. Cold, calculating, just like the man who owned it. Welcome to Clearwater Ridge, the driver said. His first words since Boston. An elegant older woman with silver-streaked auburn hair waited at the entrance. Miss Laughlin, I'm Fiona Bellamy, the estate manager. Her smile seemed genuine, but her eyes held something Amara couldn't read. Let me show you to your quarters. The interior was museum quiet. No staff, no warmth, just spotless surfaces and priceless art. Her footsteps echoed across marble floors. Where is everyone? Amara asked. Mr. Everhart prefers minimal staff. Privacy is paramount. Fiona led her through a maze of hallways. Your suite is in the east wing. Mr. Everhart occupies the west. The middle sections are common areas, though he rarely uses them. The suite would have thrilled her under any other circumstances. A bedroom larger than her entire Boston apartment, a bathroom of Italian marble, and a studio stocked with art supplies finer than any she'd ever touched. There are clothes in the closet, all in your size. Fiona's expression softened momentarily. Dinner is at 7 in the main dining room. Mr. Everhart expects punctuality. When the door closed behind Fiona, Amara rushed to the windows. They overlooked a sheer cliff drop to the rocky shores of a lake. Beautiful and inescapable. She tested her suite door. Unlocked. Small mercies. The closet held designer clothes with tags still attached. Casual wear, formal gowns, even lingerie that made her flush. A collection for every possible scenario. How long had Callum Everhart been planning this? At 6:58, Fiona appeared to escort her downstairs. The dining room stretched beneath a crystal chandelier, a table set for 12 with only 2 places prepared at opposite ends. Miss Laughlin. The voice came from the shadows. Callum Everhart stepped into the light, tall and imposing in a tailored suit that emphasized shoulders too broad for a man who'd built his fortune in laboratories and boardrooms. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, straight nose. Dark hair swept back from intense eyes that studied her with clinical precision. Sit. Not a request. She remained standing. Am I a prisoner here? You're a transaction. He took his seat at the head of the table. Your father borrowed money he couldn't repay. You're the collateral. For 6 months. His expression remained impassive. Until I decide the debt is settled. And what exactly am I expected to do during that time? Whatever I ask. He cut into his steak with surgical precision, starting with joining me for dinner. Amara reluctantly took her seat. My father said. Your father says many things, few of them true. Callum's eyes narrowed. Let me be clear about the rules. You don't leave Clearwater without permission. You don't contact anyone without approval. You don't enter the West Wing under any circumstances. And if I refuse? Then your father goes to prison for fraud, and your mother loses the medical care my company provides. The experimental treatment keeping her alive isn't covered by insurance, as I'm sure you're aware. Amara's blood went cold. He'd investigated everything. Why me? You could have taken the gallery, the properties. I already own those. Callum studied her with detached curiosity. You're the only thing Orion Lachlan truly values. Then you've miscalculated. He sold me to you, remember? Something flickered behind Callum's eyes. Surprise, perhaps respect. We'll see who's miscalculated, Miss Lachlan. He nodded to a server who materialized from nowhere. I expect you at breakfast tomorrow, 7 a.m. sharp. We have work to do. What kind of work? Callum's smile never reached his eyes. Saving your life. The first week at Clearwater Ridge passed in eerie silence. Amara barely saw Callum Everhart after their initial dinner. He was a ghost in his own home, appearing only in glimpses, a door closing, footsteps in distant corridors, a shadow passing behind frosted glass. Her gilded cage became a study in contrasts. Every material comfort provided, every freedom denied. The East Wing held a gym, library, and her lavish studio, but invisible boundaries confined her. Electronic locks required fingerprints she didn't possess. Gardens surrounded by surveillance cameras. A heated pool overlooking the lake, yet no path to the water below. On her 8th morning, Amara woke to find Fiona Bellamy placing a breakfast tray beside her bed. You're looking pale, Fiona said, studying her with motherly concern. Are you feeling all right? Amara sat up, surprised by how much effort it took. Just tired. I haven't been sleeping well. Nightmares. Fiona's question seemed loaded with meaning. How did you know? These walls have hosted many troubled dreams. Fiona adjusted the curtains, letting in slices of Vermont sunshine. Mr. Everhart wants to see you in the observatory at 10. Dress warmly. It's always cold up there. The observatory occupied the mansion's highest point. Glass walls offered panoramic views of the mountains, but Amara's attention fixed on the man standing before a wall of screens displaying medical data she couldn't decipher. Your blood test results, Callum explained without turning around. His voice echoed in the dome-shaped room. They're concerning. You took my blood? Amara checked her arms for puncture marks. While you slept? I have questions that couldn't wait for your consent. Anger flared in her chest. That's assault. That's survival. He finally faced her. Dark circles beneath his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. You're getting sick, Amara. The same pattern as the others. What others? Callum gestured to a chair. When she remained standing, something like respect flickered across his face. 3 women have lived in your suite over the past 2 years. All developed the same symptoms. Fatigue first, then nosebleeds, cognitive disorientation, organ failure. Ice flooded Amara's veins. What happened to them? They died. His clinical detachment cracked slightly. Despite everything I tried. Is that why I'm here? Another lab rat. You're here because your father owes me money. Callum typed a command, changing the display to her medical history. Your unusual genetic profile was a fortunate coincidence. There's nothing wrong with my genes. On the contrary, you carry a rare mutation that might be the key to understanding what's happening. A wave of dizziness hit her. The room tilted sideways as she grabbed the back of a chair for support. Callum was beside her instantly, one arm around her waist. His touch was surprisingly gentle as he guided her to sit. When did the headaches start? He asked, checking her pupils with a penlight. I don't have. Pain lanced through her skull, contradicting her denial. Yesterday. His expression darkened. It's progressing faster than I expected. What is? I don't know yet. But I intend to find out before it kills you too. That afternoon, specialists arrived. Blood drawn, scans taken, questions asked in sterile rooms that hadn't existed the day before. Equipment appeared overnight, transforming the East Wing's lower level into a medical facility. Amara submitted to their tests, watching Callum through glass partitions as he analyzed results in real time. His intensity both frightening and oddly reassuring. Whatever his motives, he was fighting for her survival. When the doctors left, she found Fiona arranging flowers in her suite. Has this happened before? Women getting sick here? Fiona's hands stilled. Mr. Everhart values his privacy. I'm dying in his house. I deserve answers. The older woman glanced at the surveillance camera, then unplugged it with casual precision. 15 minutes before security resets. She sat on the edge of Amara's bed. The first was Jasmine Liu, 26, brilliant biochemist. She came willingly, a research partnership, found unconscious in the lab after 3 months, dead within weeks. And the others? Diana Winters, a concert pianist with gambling debts. Then Rachel Kane, an immunologist with a troubled past. Fiona arranged the flowers with mechanical focus. Different backgrounds, similar symptoms. Were they? Amara struggled with the question. Was Callum involved with them? Not romantically, if that's what you're asking. His interest was purely scientific. Fiona lowered her voice further. There's a laboratory in the West Wing. I've glimpsed things there. Treatments he tested on himself before trying them on them. He experimented on them. He tried to save them. Fiona's expression softened unexpectedly. You should know, he barely slept while they were dying. He's not as cold as he seems. That doesn't make him a hero. No, but it makes him human. Fiona reconnected the camera. Whatever's happening, it started before you arrived. The symptoms always accelerate once you're here. Something in the house is making us sick, or someone. Fiona headed for the door. Mr. Everhard isn't the only one with secrets at Clearwater. That night, unable to sleep, Amara wandered to the glass-walled atrium connecting the wings. Lightning illuminated the mountains as a storm rolled in, matching her turbulent thoughts. Insomnia is the next symptom. She turned to find Callum watching her, still in his dress shirt and slacks despite the late hour. Am I going to die here? Her question hung between them. Not if I can help it. For the first time, emotion cracked his facade, determination tinged with something darker. Amara studied him in the lightning flashes. Why do you care? I'm just collateral, remember? His eyes met hers, haunted by ghosts she couldn't name. Because I can't watch another woman die in this house. Thunder shook the glass walls as they stood in silence. Two strangers bound by a mystery neither fully understood, predator and prey, or perhaps two victims of the same unseen enemy. The nosebleed started during breakfast. One moment Amara was forcing down bland oatmeal prescribed by Callum's medical team. The next she was staring at crimson droplets spreading across white linen. Don't move. Callum's voice came from the doorway. He crossed to her in 3 strides, tilting her head forward with surprising gentleness. Pinch here. He guided her fingers to the bridge of her nose. And breathe through your mouth. His palm against her back was warm, steady. When the bleeding stopped, he studied the stained napkin with clinical detachment. More tests, he said, already reaching for his phone. Amara pulled away. No more needles today. This isn't negotiable. Neither is my sanity. She stood, swaying slightly as black spots danced in her vision. I need air. Real air, not the filtered, sterilized atmosphere in this mausoleum. Something shifted in Callum's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. The East Gardens. 30 minutes. Stay within the perimeter. He scrutinized her paleness. Take Fiona with you. The gardens were clinically perfect. Geometric hedges, symmetrical flower beds, not a fallen petal in sight. But the sun felt glorious on her skin, the mountain air sharp and clean. He's worried, Fiona said, watching Amara absorb the sunlight like a starving plant. I've never seen him allow a patient outside during acute phase. Patient? Amara caught the word. Is that what I am to him? Fiona's silence was answer enough. What happened to his sister? Amara asked, remembering Callum's haunted expression during their late-night encounter. Eliza. Fiona's eyes clouded with old grief. She was everything to him. Brilliant, kind, everything Callum pretends not to be. The same disease? Similar pattern. Different cause. She was 16 when the symptoms started. 18 when they buried her. Fiona adjusted her cardigan against the mountain breeze. That's when Callum transformed the family pharmaceutical company. Every resource redirected to rare disease research. And his parents? His father never forgave him for failing to save her. Called him worthless every day until the old man's heart gave out. Fiona's voice hardened. Some men leave scars you can't see. Later that afternoon, dizzy from another round of tests, Amara took a wrong turn. The corridor looked identical to others in the East Wing, but the air felt different, cooler, with faint chemical undertones. A keypad-secured door stood partially open, a maintenance cart preventing it from locking. Beyond it lay another hallway, Clinical white rather than warm woods and tasteful art. West Wing territory. Heart pounding, she slipped through the gap. If answers existed anywhere, they'd be here. The first rooms held nothing suspicious. Storage, a small gym, guest suites untouched for years. Then she found the laboratory. Unlike the temporary medical setup in the East Wing, this was permanent. State-of-the-art equipment hummed quietly. Multiple workstations displayed molecular models rotating on screensavers. A glass refrigerator held rows of labeled samples. On a central island, a metal case sat open. Inside, perfectly arranged syringes contained amber liquid. A nearby computer displayed a project header, Phoenix. Beneath it, patient files, Jasmine, Diana, Rachel, and now Amara. She clicked on her file. Pages of genetic analysis, blood work, progression charts. And most disturbing, predictions of her deterioration timeline. According to Callum's models, she had less than 3 months. The sound of footsteps sent her ducking behind a storage cabinet. Through a crack, she watched Callum enter the lab alone. He rolled up his sleeve with practiced efficiency, selecting a syringe from the case she'd been examining. Without hesitation, he injected the contents into his arm, jaw clenched against obvious pain. After disposing of the needle, he braced himself against the counter, eyes closed as the substance took effect. For 30 seconds, he remained frozen. Then, with clinical precision, he recorded something in an electronic log before preparing a blood sample from himself. Amara shifted position, her foot brushing against a metal tray. The sound was tiny, but in the silent lab, it might as well have been an alarm. Callum's head snapped up. Who's there? She considered hiding, running, lying, discarded each option in heartbeats. Instead, she stepped into view. You're injecting yourself with the same thing that's killing me. His expression cycled through anger, resignation, then something unreadable. No, I'm injecting myself with what might save you. What is Phoenix? She demanded, gesturing toward the screen. My sister's legacy. He didn't move to stop her as she approached the computer. After she died, I discovered a genetic mutation that might have saved her. Too late. These other women carried similar markers, different expressions of the same genetic anomaly. You experimented on them. I tried to save them. For the first time, raw emotion cracked his composure. I failed, and now you're experimenting on yourself? The compound is too experimental for traditional trials. Someone has to test it. Why you? A bitter smile twisted his mouth. Because I carry the same genetic time bomb. Mine's just been ticking longer. Understanding dawned. You're sick too. Terminal. 5 years, maybe less. He spoke matter-of-factly. The difference is, I was born with it. You and the others. Something accelerated your condition after arriving here. Something in this house is poisoning us. Or someone. His eyes held hers. My sister's deterioration followed the same pattern. My father called it God's judgment on our bloodline. I call it murder. Amara's legs suddenly weakened. The room tilted as Callum caught her, his arms surprisingly strong for a man fighting his own genetic death sentence. The treatments are working for you, she observed, noting the steadiness of his hands despite the obvious pain the injection caused. Temporary remission, not a cure. He helped her to a chair. But every treatment gets me closer to saving you. Why do you care if I live or die? He turned away, organizing syringes with obsessive precision. Because saving you might be the only worthwhile thing I do with my remaining time. As if on cue, her nose began bleeding again, heavier this time. Callum moved with practiced efficiency, applying pressure, his expression betraying genuine concern beneath his clinical facade. I need a tissue sample, he said when the bleeding slowed. Something's accelerating your symptoms far faster than the genetic profile would suggest. You think I'm being poisoned deliberately? His silence was confirmation enough. Who would want to kill me? I've never even been to Vermont before. It's not about you, Callum said, preparing a syringe of clear liquid. It's about what your death might do to me. The medication spread cool relief through her veins. As consciousness faded, she heard him add softly, and someone knows exactly how far I'll go to prevent that. Amara woke to darkness and the soft beep of medical equipment, and tethered her to a hospital-grade bed that hadn't been in her suite that morning. The nosebleed had evolved into something worse. Hours lost to unconsciousness, another step down the deadly path the others had traveled. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder echoing across the mountains. In the armchair beside her bed, Callum Everhart slept, his tall frame awkwardly compressed, case notes scattered across his lap. Without his perpetual alertness, he looked younger, the lines of calculation and control smoothed away. A particularly violent thunderclap startled him awake. His eyes found hers immediately, relief replacing momentary disorientation. How long? Her voice rasped from disuse. 17 hours. He checked the monitors, professional mask slipping back into place. Your kidneys are showing early signs of stress. Like Rachel Kane, Amara had studied the files during her laboratory intrusion. She lasted 22 days after kidney involvement. You're not Rachel. Callum adjusted her for. Your genetic profile is more resilient. So I'll suffer longer? His hand paused. You won't suffer at all if I can help it. Lightning illuminated the room, thunder following instantly. The storm had reached them. Tell me about Eliza, Amara said, surprising herself with the request. Callum stiffened, then sank back into the chair. What do you want to know? Anything. Who she was. What she loved. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then, staring at the rain-lashed windows, he began speaking. She collected butterflies. Not pinned in display cases. She thought that was barbaric. She photographed them, identified species no one believed lived in Vermont. The memory softened his voice. She wanted to be an entomologist. Had applications ready for Stanford, Cornell. How old were you when she got sick? 23. Just finished my MBA. Working for my father, hating every minute. He rubbed his thumb over a small scar on his hand. We were supposed to run Everhart Pharmaceuticals together someday. She had the scientific mind. I understood business. Your father, Augustus Everhart, built an empire on insulin price gouging and repackaged medications. Bitterness edged into his tone. Innovative research wasn't profitable enough. When Eliza's symptoms appeared, our family doctors said it was stress, attention-seeking. Lightning caught the glint of moisture in his eyes, quickly blinked away. By the time specialists identified the genetic component, her organs were failing. My father called it natural selection. Said the Everhart line couldn't tolerate weakness. His knuckles whitened. I took control of the company the day after his funeral. Every resource redirected to rare disease research. And discovered you carry the same mutation. Milder expression, slower progression. His clinical tone couldn't disguise the underlying fear. Without treatment, I'd be dead already. The power flickered, emergency generators humming to life as the main electricity failed. Security system alarms chirped briefly before resetting. Callum moved to check the window, his frame silhouetted against the storm-dark sky. The mountain road will be impassable by morning. We're isolated until the storm passes. Something about the enforced isolation, the darkness, the shared confidences, shifted the atmosphere between them. When he returned to her bedside, the rigid distance he'd maintained for weeks seemed diminished. You didn't marry, Amara observed. Because of the genetic risk? Partly. He adjusted her blanket with unexpected tenderness. And partly because I'm not good at letting people close. Yet here you are, keeping watch over a woman you allegedly bought as collateral. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Allegedly. I've been thinking about what you said. About my father's debt. She studied his reaction. The numbers don't add up. My father's gallery was worth $5 million at most. You claimed $80 million. What's the real reason I'm here? The power failed completely, plunging the room into darkness until emergency lights cast everything in soft blue glow. In that moment of transition, Callum's carefully maintained facade cracked further. Your father approached me, he admitted. Offered you as a research subject. Said your mother's medical history suggested genetic compatibility with our Phoenix protocol. Ice spread through Amara's veins, colder than any symptom. My father knew I'd get sick here. He knew your genetic profile matched our research parameters. Whether he understood the risks. Callum's expression hardened. He was desperate. Gambling debts, failed investments. He needed money, and you were his most valuable asset. So you bought me. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. I agreed to forgive his debts in exchange for your participation in a research study. Voluntary participation. Which is why you created the collateral story. I thought you'd be more likely to stay if you believed it was to save your family. His honesty was unexpected. I never anticipated the accelerated symptoms. None of the previous participants deteriorated so quickly. Previous participants? You mean the women who died here? His silence was answer enough. You lied to me. Yes. No justification, no excuse. Anger and betrayal surged through her. She tried to rise, to put distance between them, but dizziness sent her falling back against the pillows. Callum caught her, his touch steadying despite everything. Get out, she whispered. Amara, get out. The force of her shout triggered another nosebleed. He didn't leave. Instead, he pressed a clean cloth to her nose with that same damnable gentleness. When the bleeding stopped, he spoke quietly. Hate me if you need to, but let me save you. Why? Tears mixed with blood on the cloth. What am I to you but another test subject? The storm reached its peak outside, wind howling through the mountain passes as the mansion creaked around them. In that moment of elemental chaos, Callum Everhart did something entirely unexpected. He took her hand in his. You're the first person since Eliza who's looked at me and seen something worth saving. The raw honesty in his voice silenced her protests. They sat in the storm-darkened room, hands joined, as the barriers between captor and captive, researcher and subject, began crumbling like the mountainside beneath the torrential rain. I'm still angry, she finally said. I know. His thumb traced gentle circles on her wrist where the 4 entered her vein. I haven't given you reason to trust me. Then give me one now. No more tests tonight. Just stay. Lightning illuminated surprise on his face, quickly replaced by something softer. He settled back into the chair beside her bed, still holding her hand as the storm raged outside and illness raged within her. Neither of them mentioned when their fingers intertwined more deliberately, a small, human connection against the darkness surrounding them both. Morning arrived with devastation. The storm had triggered landslides across the mountain, cutting off Clearwater Ridge from the outside world. Power remained intermittent, cell service non-existent. In the eerie quiet that followed the tempest, Amara felt stronger, a temporary reprieve her medical charts warned wouldn't last. She found Callum in the East Wing's makeshift command center, directing emergency response over satellite phones. Their moment of connection during the storm hung between them, unacknowledged in daylight. The road will take at least 4 days to clear, he informed her, expression once again composed and distant. Helicopter evacuation is our contingency plan if your condition deteriorates. Have you checked the water supply? Amara asked, watching his reaction carefully. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why? If something in this house is poisoning me, water is the most direct delivery system. Callum studied her for a long moment, then nodded to a security technician. Full spectrum analysis of all water sources. Priority 1. They moved to his private office where satellite imagery of the property displayed on wall screens. Amara noticed security camera feeds showing teams inspecting the grounds, the water treatment system, the air filtration units. You're taking my poisoning theory seriously. I've suspected external interference for months. Callum pulled up a folder marked toxicology. Each woman's symptoms accelerated too rapidly for genetic factors alone. Why didn't you tell me? Without proof, it seemed paranoid. He hesitated. And I wasn't sure you weren't involved. Me? Amara stepped back. You thought I was poisoning myself? I considered every possibility. Your father arranged your presence here with suspicious eagerness. The mention of her father reignited her anger. Have you spoken to him since the storm? Satellite call this morning. He seemed concerned about the property damage, not your health. Something in his tone made her look closer. What aren't you telling me? Callum's jaw tightened. Your father asked if you'd signed any documents yet. What documents? Apparently, he told my legal team you'd be willing to sign over your rights to any treatments developed using your genetic material. Cold clarity washed over her. He wanted to profit from my illness. It appears so. Amara sank into a chair, fragments of memory reassembling into a horrifying picture. Her father's insistence she meet his new business partner months ago. The strange vitamins he'd encouraged her to take. His detailed knowledge of her medical history despite his usual disinterest in her life. He knew, she whispered. He knew I carried the genetic marker before he offered me to you. That would explain his confidence in approaching me. Callum's expression darkened, and may explain the accelerated symptoms. If he predosed you with a triggering agent, he tried to kill me for money. The words felt surreal leaving her mouth. Not necessarily kill. Perhaps just ensure you developed symptoms that would make you valuable to my research. A security officer interrupted with a tablet displaying test results. Callum scanned them rapidly, his expression shifting from concentration to cold fury. Thallium. Trace amounts in the East Wing water system only. He showed Amara the data. Consistent with your symptoms, but delivered with precision. Your suite, your studio, nowhere else. My father couldn't have accessed the water system after I arrived. No. Callum's eyes met hers. Someone inside Clearwater did this. The implications hung between them. A traitor within the limited staff, someone with access and motive. Someone working with her father. Callum ordered the East Wing water shut down immediately and Amara's suite relocated to a secure floor. As security teams began methodically searching the mansion, Amara retreated to the library, seeking distraction from the betrayal crushing her chest. Behind a shelf of first editions, she discovered a hidden panel, the kind of architectural secret common in old mansions. Curiosity overriding caution, she pressed it. The panel slid open to reveal a small study lined with medical journals. A desk held stacks of correspondence and a laptop that, surprisingly, wasn't password protected. Opening it revealed years of emails between her father and someone identified only as TW. Her breath caught as she scrolled through message after message outlining a calculated plan spanning years. Her father had indeed known about her genetic profile, had paid for secret testing when she was a teenager, had watched for symptoms, had grown impatient waiting for natural disease progression, and most damning, had partnered with someone inside Everhart Pharmaceuticals to ensure her genetic material became company property, with both men sharing the profits from any resulting treatments. The emails mentioned preparations to ensure symptoms developed on schedule once she arrived at Clearwater. Her father had been poisoning her slowly for months before sending her to Callum. The final email, dated just 3 days ago, set her hands shaking. Oh, storm damage worse than anticipated. Transportation cutoff works in our favor. Accelerating timeline. Dosage increased as discussed. When symptoms reach critical, C will be desperate enough to use experimental protocol 37. Once genetic integration confirmed, proceed with phase 2. Remember, she needs to be alive for signature transfer, but condition irrelevant after. The message's clinical callousness struck like physical pain. Her father had not only sold her, he'd arranged her medical deterioration as a business strategy. She was so absorbed in the discovery that she didn't notice the study door opening behind her. Those are private files. Thaddeus Westbrook's voice was silk over steel. Amara turned slowly to face Callum's cousin and company vice president. His perfect smile didn't reach his eyes. You're TW. She kept the laptop between them. You've been working with my father. Orion Lachlan is an opportunist, nothing more. Thaddeus stepped into the small room, blocking the exit. The real partnership has always been between Everharts. You've been poisoning me, accelerating a natural process. He shrugged, as if discussing mild medication side effects. The thallium merely speeds what would happen eventually. Does Callum know you're trying to steal his research? Something dangerous flashed in Thaddeus's eyes. Callum's obsession with saving doomed women has nearly bankrupted this company. Phoenix belongs in capable hands. You mean profitable hands. The treatment that saves you will be worth billions. Why should your father and I not benefit from your convenient genetic anomaly? He stepped closer. Callum would give it away out of guilt and misplaced ethics. You're murdering women for profit, sacrificing few to save millions. Business requires pragmatism. He reached for the laptop. Now, let's discuss your immediate cooperation. Amara shoved the heavy desk toward him and bolted for the door, adrenaline temporarily overriding her weakened state. She collided with Fiona in the hallway. He's poisoning me, Thaddeus, and my father. The words tumbled out as she pulled Fiona toward the main house. I know, dear. Fiona's voice transformed from maternal warmth to clinical detachment. Who do you think has been adjusting your dosage? The betrayal hit harder than any physical blow. As Amara staggered backward, Fiona produced a syringe from her pocket. Nothing personal, just business decisions above your pay grade. Amara ran, vision tunneling as she navigated the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. The storm's damage had disabled security doors, allowing her to cross wing boundaries that would normally be sealed. Behind her, footsteps pursued at an unhurried pace, the confidence of predators who knew their prey was trapped. She needed to reach Callum. needed to warn him of the conspiracy within his own house, his own family. But as she rounded the final corner to the command center, another nosebleed struck with violent force. She collapsed to her knees as darkness crowded the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was Callum rushing toward her, alarm replacing his usual controlled expression, and behind him, Thaddeus approaching with professional concern that didn't reach his calculating eyes. Consciousness returned in fragments. Beeping monitors. Whispered arguments. The burn of medication through her veins. Amara fought through layers of sedation, desperate to warn Callum, but her body refused to respond. Blood pressure dropping again. A voice she didn't recognize. "We're losing her." Increased the dosage. Callum's voice, stripped of its usual control. "That protocol isn't approved. Do it now or leave my house." The command brooked no argument. Pain exploded through her system as new medication hit her bloodstream. Amara arched against restraints she hadn't realized bound her to the bed. Her eyes flew open to blinding light, and Callum's face hovering above hers, rare emotion breaking through his mask. "Stay with me," he ordered, one hand gripping hers. "Fight it, Amara." She tried to speak, to warn him about Thaddeus, about Fiona, about her father. Only a weak croak emerged. "Don't try to talk." He brushed sweat-soaked hair from her forehead. "The thallium poisoning triggered catastrophic acceleration of your genetic condition. We're counteracting both simultaneously." The room spun as she forced her eyes to track movement behind him. Medical staff she didn't recognize. Security personnel. But no Thaddeus. No Fiona. She squeezed his hand, fighting to form words. Thad betrayed. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I know. Security found the hidden study after you collapsed. We have the laptop." Relief washed through her, until he added, "Thaddeus and Fiona have disappeared. We're searching the grounds." A team of doctors worked around them, adjusting equipment, monitoring vitals. Through her fog, Amara recognized they weren't the usual Clearwater medical staff. "Who are?" "My personal research team from Geneva." Callum hadn't released her hand. Helicopter evacuation during the storm was risky, but necessary. "How long?" 3 days. His voice roughened. "You've been in and out of consciousness." 3 days lost. Her condition had advanced into what the Phoenix Files called terminal stage, the point where the previous women had been beyond saving. One of the doctors approached, expression grave. "The latest test results, sir." Callum scanned the tablet, his face betraying nothing. But his grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly. "Leave us." He dismissed the medical team with a nod. When they were alone, he sank into the chair beside her bed, still holding her hand like a lifeline. "Tell me," she whispered. "Your organs are failing. Kidneys at 12% function. Liver compromised. Cardiac inflammation advancing." Clinical words couldn't disguise the emotion beneath them. "The treatments are buying time, not reversing damage." "How much time?" His eyes met hers directly. "Without intervention, 36 hours." The pronouncement should have terrified her. Instead, strange calm settled over Amara. "What intervention?" "An experimental treatment. Full molecular replacement therapy using my own genetic material as a scaffold." He spoke faster, intensity building. "We share enough markers to create a hybridized repair sequence, but with my mutations suppressed." "Has it worked before?" "It's never been attempted in humans." The admission cost him visibly. "The risk of rejection is significant." "Fatal?" "Potentially. No sugarcoating, just truth. And the alternative is certain death in 36 hours. Amara tried to smile. "Not much of a choice." "There's more." Callum leaned closer. "The treatment requires conscious participation. Your body must remain awake through the entire procedure, 16 hours of considerable pain." "Worse than dying?" A ghost of his rare smile appeared. "Marginally better, I'm told." Despite everything, Amara found herself smiling back. "When do we start?" "There's something you should know first." Callum's expression turned grave. "We found evidence in Thaddeus's files. The conspiracy goes deeper than your father and my cousin. Fiona, and others. Board members. Research directors. They've been sabotaging Phoenix for years while developing a parallel program." His jaw tightened. "They've isolated the curative properties, but stripped out the protections I built in." "Protections?" "My version of Phoenix includes genetic markers preventing weaponization or commercialization. The treatment can never be patented, never restricted to those who can pay. He met her gaze. Their version has no such limitations. Understanding dawned. They want to sell the cure to the highest bidder and eliminate competing treatments, including you and me. He released her hand to pace the room. The women who died here weren't failed experiments. They were successful ones, terminated once their genetic material had yielded what was needed. Horror washed through her. They let them die on purpose, while stealing my research to create their modified version. Callum's controlled facade cracked, revealing banked fury beneath. Thaddeus was particularly efficient. As my cousin, he had access to everything, my labs, my files, even my blood samples. The full picture emerged with terrible clarity. My father knew all this. He arranged your stay here specifically because your genetic profile was the final piece they needed. Callum's expression darkened. The thallium poisoning was timed to reach critical stage now, when storm damage has cut off conventional access and communications. They're coming back to finish the job. They need samples of your genetic material after it's been treated with my version of Phoenix. He returned to her side. I've evacuated all non-essential personnel, doubled security on remaining access points. But we're still trapped on the mountain for at least another 24 hours. His hand found hers again. We need to begin treatment immediately, not just to save you, but to prevent them from getting what they want. The weight of everything, betrayal, conspiracy, her impending death, should have crushed her. Instead, strange certainty filled Amara. In this nightmare, Callum Everhart had become her only constant. The man who had bought her like property now fought against his own family, his own company, to save her life. You didn't have to tell me any of this, she said, studying his face. You could have just treated me without explaining the risks. I won't take your choices away. Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Not again. The admission hung between them, acknowledgement of how their story began versus what it had become. Why are you really fighting so hard to save me? She asked, needing to hear the truth before facing what lay ahead. Callum stared at their joined hands for a long moment. When he looked up, his customary walls had fallen completely. Because somewhere between cataloging your genetic markers and watching you fight, I stopped seeing a research subject. His voice roughened. I started seeing the woman I could love, if we had time. The monitor betrayed her heart's reaction, beeping faster as emotion tightened her throat. Then let's make time, she whispered. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against hers. 16 hours of agony for the chance at a future. Are you certain? I'm certain about you. The truth surprised her even as she spoke it. Everything else we figure out together. Callum's kiss was gentle, tentative, the action of a man and used to tenderness. When he pulled back, determination had replaced vulnerability. I'll prepare the treatment protocol. He rose, once again the focused scientist, but with new purpose driving him. We begin at sunset. As he reached the door, Amara called after him. Callum, when this is over, when we're both safe, promise me one thing. He turned, waiting. Promise me we'll make them pay for what they've done. The smile that crossed his face held no warmth, only dangerous promise. That was always part of the treatment plan. The treatment room resembled a hybrid of operating theater and high-tech laboratory. Medical equipment hummed alongside experimental devices Amara couldn't identify. A central platform held what looked like a modified MRI chamber connected to tanks of iridescent fluid. Molecular delivery system, Callum explained, following her gaze as technicians prepared the equipment. The chamber maintains cellular resonance while the compound rebuilds damaged tissue. Despite his clinical tone, tension radiated from him. Shadows beneath his eyes betrayed sleepless nights spent perfecting the treatment protocol. His hand trembled slightly as he checked her for the first sign of physical weakness he'd allowed her to see. When did you last take your own medication? She asked quietly. It's not relevant. It is to me. Their eyes locked in silent battle until he conceded. 48 hours. The last dose was used calibrating your treatment. You're sacrificing your own treatment for mine. A calculated risk. He adjusted settings on a monitor. My progression is slower. I can afford the delay. One of the doctors approached with a tablet for Callum's approval. After scanning it, he returned to Amara's side. Last chance to change your mind. His voice remained steady, but his eyes betrayed fear, not for himself, but for her. Amara reached for his hand. I trust you. Those 3 words visibly affected him more than any previous declaration. For a man defined by control and calculation, trust was perhaps the rarest gift. The preparation was meticulous. Electrodes attached to her temples, chest, spine, for lines established in both arms. The chamber awaited, its interior glowing with soft blue light. The first stage targets damaged tissue with nanoscale repair mechanisms, Callum explained as they transferred her to the platform. Second stage introduces molecular scaffolding. Third stage integrates the hybridized genetic material. And the pain begins at stage 2, increases exponentially through stage 3. He held her gaze. I'll be monitoring everything. If it becomes unbearable, it won't. As technicians moved to position her, Callum surprised everyone by leaning down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Fight through it. Come back to me. The chamber sealed around her with a pneumatic hiss. Through the transparent top, she watched Callum take command at the central console, his focus absolute as the procedure began. Stage 1 felt like floating in warm water. Drowsiness tugged at her consciousness, but the system prevented sleep through mild electrical stimulation whenever her awareness began slipping. Hours passed in dreamy half-consciousness. Monitors displayed cellular scans showing damaged tissue outlined in red, gradually changing to amber as repair mechanisms deployed. Then stage 2 began. Pain exploded through her system like liquid fire. Every nerve ending ignited simultaneously as molecular scaffolding attached to cellular structures. Amara arched against restraints, a scream tearing from her throat. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw Callum watching readouts, his expression agonized but resolute. When their eyes met, he placed his palm against the chamber glass. A promise, a connection. She focused on his hand, on his eyes, using them as anchors against the tide of agony threatening to sweep away her sanity. Hours blurred together. Pain became her universe. The only constants were Callum's unwavering presence and the readouts showing progression. Damaged tissue transforming from amber to green as restoration proceeded. Halfway through stage 2, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security breach in sectors 3 and 7, announced an automated voice. Armed intruders detected. Callum barked orders to security personnel while never leaving the treatment console. Through the haze of pain, Amara heard gunfire in distant corridors. "They're here," she gasped. "Concentrate on the treatment." Callum's voice remained steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "Nothing else matters." The medical team continued working as security forces engaged the intruders. Progress indicators showed 68% completion when the laboratory doors burst open. Thaddeus Westbrook entered, flanked by armed mercenaries. Behind them, Orion Lachlan, her father, surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "Step away from the console, Callum." Thaddeus aimed a pistol at his cousin's head. "The procedure continues under my supervision." Callum didn't move, hands still working controls. "Interrupt stage 2 and she dies. Then finish it." Thaddeus gestured to the mercenaries to secure the room's perimeter. "But stage 3 happens under my protocol." Amara's father approached the chamber, studying her with clinical detachment that held no paternal concern. "Is genetic integration proceeding on schedule?" As expected, Thaddeus consulted a tablet one of the mercenaries handed him. "Her cellular adaptation rate exceeds projections. The commercial applications are beyond anything we anticipated." "Commercial applications?" Callum's voice cut through their discussion, dangerous in its quietness. "This is a medical treatment, not a product launch." "It's both." Orion Lachlan finally looked at his daughter, his expression revealing nothing but cold ambition. "Exclusivity drives value. Limited access ensures maximum return on investment." Through waves of pain, Amara watched the tableau unfold, her father and Thaddeus discussing profit projections while mercenaries held Callum's medical team at gunpoint. The treatment continued automatically, progress indicators now showing 79%. "Why involve my daughter at all?" Callum asked, buying time as stage 2 neared completion. "You had access to my research, my facilities. We needed the final catalyst." Thaddeus moved closer to the chamber, studying Amara like a particularly valuable specimen. "Your sister's genetic profile was incomplete. We needed someone with the complementary markers who could survive long enough for complete integration. The other women, failed before full integration. Their genetic stability collapsed under treatment stress. Thaddeus smiled without warmth. Amara's profile suggested superior resilience. The perfect final test subject. Rage flooded through Amara, temporarily eclipsing even the treatment pain. They had selected her specifically, had poisoned her deliberately, had calculated her suffering as a business expense. Stage 2 completed with a series of soft tones. The pain receded briefly as systems recalibrated for the final stage. Move aside, Callum. Thaddeus gestured with his weapon. Stage 3 proceeds under my protocol. Your protocol lacks the stabilization matrices. Callum remained at the console. She'll die within hours of completion, after providing everything we need. Her father's callousness was absolute. Her genetic material post-integration is the final component. Understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. They never intended for her to survive the procedure. Her death was programmed into their version of the treatment. Stage 3 preparation completed. The system awaited final authorization. Last chance, Callum. Thaddeus pressed the gun against his cousin's temple. Step away. In that moment of ultimate crisis, something extraordinary happened. Callum Everhart, the man who had calculated every variable, controlled every outcome throughout his life, smiled. Authorization Phoenix Eclipse, he said clearly. The laboratory plunged into darkness. Emergency systems activated, bathing everything in red light. Before anyone could react, the treatment chamber sealed with reinforced shielding, cutting Amara off from the chaos erupting outside. Through the small viewing panel, she watched in shock as Callum launched himself at Thaddeus. The gun discharged, the sound muffled by the chamber's insulation. Bodies grappled in the crimson emergency lighting. Security doors slammed throughout the facility as Callum's contingency protocol activated. The treatment console locked down, Stage 3 initiating automatically under Callum's original parameters. Then pain beyond imagination consumed her world as genetic integration began. Amara screamed until her voice gave out, every cell in her body simultaneously dying and rebirthing as the hybridized material rewrote her genetic code. Through the agony, through the sealed chamber, she heard another gunshot. Saw Callum fall. Watched Thaddeus standing over him in triumph. Then darkness claimed her as Stage 3 reached its peak intensity, her consciousness unable to withstand the simultaneous transformation of her entire cellular structure. Her last thought before oblivion. Callum had fallen saving her. She couldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. White. Endless white. Then beeping. Rhythmic. Insistent. Amara floated in limbo between non-existence and awareness, uncertain which direction led home. A voice anchored her. Unfamiliar. Professional. Brain activity normalizing. Cellular regeneration at 97%. She's coming back. Coming back from where? The question formed sluggishly as consciousness reassembled itself piece by fragmented piece. Memory returned in flashes. The treatment chamber. Excruciating pain. Thaddeus and her father breaking in. Callum falling as gunshots echoed. Callum. Her eyes flew open, the sudden brightness sending daggers of pain through her skull. Hospital ceiling. Medical equipment. The antiseptic smell of professional care, not Clearwater's specialized facility. Ms. Lachlan. A doctor leaned into her field of vision. Can you hear me? Callum. Her voice emerged as a rasp. Where is he? The doctor exchanged glances with a nurse. I'll page Dr. Winters. Minutes stretched interminably until a distinguished older woman entered, chart in hand. Welcome back, Ms. Lachlan. I'm Dr. Helen Winters, Chief of Oncology at Massachusetts General. You've been under our care for nearly 4 weeks. 4 weeks. The information stunned her. You were transferred here after stabilization at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. The experimental treatment you underwent created some unique challenges for our team. Callum Everhart. Where is he? Dr. Winters' expression softened. Perhaps we should discuss your condition first. Tell me if he's alive. Amara struggled to sit up. Please. Mr. Everhart is alive. The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He's been in recovery 3 floors above you. Gunshot wound to the chest, significant blood loss. He was conscious 2 days ago. Relief flooded through her with such intensity that monitors registered the change in her vital signs. And the others? Thaddeus Westbrook? My father. I'm not authorized to discuss the ongoing federal investigation. Dr. Winter's tone suggested she knew more than she could say. But I can tell you both men are in federal custody awaiting trial. Over the next hour, Dr. Winters explained what Amara had difficulty comprehending, the miracle of her recovery. The experimental treatment had not only neutralized the thallium poisoning, but had completely restructured her genetic code, eliminating the deadly mutation that had claimed Callum's sister and the other women. Your cellular regeneration exceeded all projections, Dr. Winters explained, showing her scan comparisons. Your body essentially rebuilt itself at the molecular level. And the treatment protocol? What happened to Callum's research? That's beyond my clearance level. The doctor checked the foredrip. But I understand the FBI's white-collar division has seized all research materials from Everhart Pharmaceuticals. 3 days later, Amara took her first steps down the hospital corridor, strength returning faster than the medical team had anticipated. Her body felt simultaneously foreign and more fundamentally hers than ever before. Rebuilt, renewed, reborn through Callum's desperate gamble. On the 5th day, permission finally came to visit him. She found Callum sitting beside the window of his private room, gazing across the Boston skyline. Thinner, paler, but undeniably alive. When he turned and saw her, something transformed in his expression, calculation, and control giving way to naked emotion. You're walking. His voice held wonder. Apparently your treatment works miracles. She moved toward him, each step bringing them closer to a future neither had dared imagine. The protocol succeeded beyond all projections. Clinical assessment couldn't mask the relief in his eyes. Your genetic structure has completely stabilized. And yours? She reached for his hand, finding it warmer than she remembered. Improving. The doctors adapted your treatment protocol for my condition. His fingers intertwined with hers. Lower efficacy due to longer disease progression, but significant improvement. How very clinical of you. She smiled, squeezing his hand. Try saying, I'm getting better like a normal person. Something like humor flickered across his face. Normality was never my strength. We have time to work on that now. Time. The word hung between them. Precious, unexpected. They had emerged from the abyss together, survivors of betrayal, illness, and violence. A week later, they stood together on the hospital roof garden, watching spring transform the Boston skyline. Federal agents had questioned them separately and together, building cases against Thaddeus, her father, and a half-dozen Everhart Pharmaceuticals executives. The board has been dissolved, Callum informed her, his arms supporting her despite her increasing strength. The government has appointed trustees until restructuring completes. Will you go back? She asked, studying his profile against the city lights. No. The firmness of his answer surprised her. My research will continue through a new foundation. No profit motive, no corporate structure, no patents. The Phoenix Foundation? A genuine smile touched his lips. I was thinking of calling it the Amara Initiative. The gesture stole her breath. Callum, you changed everything. He turned to face her fully. My research, my company, my understanding of what matters. Pretty impressive for collateral. She meant it as a joke, but his expression grew serious. I need to ask you something. His formal tone brought back echoes of their first meeting, the imperious billionaire used to controlling his world. But his eyes now held vulnerability she'd never imagined possible in Callum Everhart. When you're fully recovered, when all this is settled, would you consider staying? Stay. She held her breath. With me. He seemed to struggle with unfamiliar territory, emotion without calculation. Not as research subject or patient or any arrangement with power imbalance. Just with me. As equals. The man who had once bought her like property now stood before her asking permission to be in her life. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of them. I'm considering opening a gallery, she said, watching confusion cross his face at the apparent non sequitur. Showcasing artists exploring medical themes. Trauma. Recovery. Rebirth. That sounds worthwhile. It needs funding. She smiled at his continued confusion. A partnership, perhaps. Professional and otherwise. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something she'd never seen there before. Joy. Unguarded and complete. 6 months later, the Amara Initiative opened its first research facility, dedicated to making genetic treatments accessible worldwide. The adjacent gallery showcased work from artists exploring themes of transformation and second chances, with proceeds funding treatment for patients who couldn't afford care. Callum and Amara moved between these spaces as partners in every sense. His scientific brilliance and her artistic vision creating something neither could have built alone. His ongoing treatment showed promising results. The death sentence that had driven his desperate research now transformed into manageable condition. 1 year after the night she'd arrived at Clearwater Ridge as human collateral, Amara stood with Callum on the mansion's reconstructed observatory deck. The property had been transformed, no longer a fortress of secrets and death, but the mountain campus of their foundation. The Phoenix Suite is ready for the first patient next week, Callum said, his arm around her waist as they surveyed the renovated East Wing. From death trap to healing center. She leaned into his embrace. That's quite a transformation. Like its founders. He turned her gently to face him. Do you regret any of it? How we began. She considered the question seriously, as he'd taught her to consider everything. I regret the women who died. I regret my father's betrayal. I regret the pain we both suffered. Her hand rested over the scar on his chest where Thaddeus's bullet had nearly taken him from her. But I don't regret finding you, even through the darkness. Against the backdrop of mountains that had witnessed their worst moments and now cradled their shared future, Callum Everhart, once her captor, now her partner, placed a ring in her palm. No arrangement, no transaction, no power imbalance, he promised. Just a question. Will you redefine destiny with me? In answer, Amara closed his fingers around the ring and wrapped her arms around his neck. Their kiss sealed a transformation neither could have imagined that first night. From ownership to partnership, from captivity to freedom, from calculation to love. Two survivors who had faced death together, now choosing life together. Not an ending, a beginning.